Hey everybody, Harmon here, and I think we're long overdue for a discussion about morality and ethics. As we head into turbulent times, I think this will be even more important to understand. And I don't know about you, but I know for myself, if I understand people's values, morals, and ethics, people that are close to me, it gives me peace of mind. Because then you can predict how they see the world, how they respond to the world, how they come to their decisions and their conclusions. And as we get more into a tighter community, well, as we should, what we do affects others a lot more. Right now, we live in a very atomized, fragmented society, and we have the luxury of living very independent lives. Sure, no, I do, but I do realize that'll eventually change. So, if you notice, in the last few months, I've been getting into more polarizing topics. Up until now, I've made it a point not to get into topics that are too controversial within our group. But one of the things I've noticed is we're on the edge of a cliff right now, and we need to all understand why this is. You go to the art of war. One of the first things it states, one of the most important things it states, is knowing the enemy and knowing the terrain. What exactly is the nature of the conflict we're at? And we need to be all on the same page, or else it doesn't work very well. But yeah, it's always a dicey thing. Groups like this, revolutions, or whatever else, often rupture and hemorrhage so close to the finish line due to infighting and bickering and all that. Well, nowadays, that's aggravated even more by social media, of course. I think social media breeds neurotic behavior. I used to think that the 60s were very turbulent, and they were, but nothing compared to what we're at right now. As an interesting side note, today's conservative is more politically aligned with the 60s, with the hippies of the 60s. They were fighting the man, promoting peace. They didn't like the media spin on everything. So they're much alike. So today's liberals, what they've done is they just moved the goalposts way off into the toolies. So that's why it seems like the liberals are so far off. Well, that explains it, right? In this video, I want to elaborate on morality and ethics. So back when I woke up in 2008, I became obsessed with philosophy and online debating. I really like the art and science of debates. I believe it's the highest form of truth. If you don't know how to debate a topic, you don't really know it. And we've really seen that in the last 6 years with the scamdemic. I marvel at how we have these brains capable of so much, yet we don't get an owner's manual for it. And I think learning philosophy is the closest thing to that. It's basically learning thinking about thinking, applying critical thinking to how we think and what we come up with. It's so extremely important. Philosophy used to be a very foundational topic in school, right back to the ancient times. Societies understood that as being the most foundational body of knowledge that other knowledge was based off. Well, they completely removed it from the modern school system because it wasn't conducive to building human-like robots, people that automatrons, people that just worked in factories and didn't have any of their independent thought. And it worked pretty good, right? We come out of an era of trusting the experts, but we've all been seriously let down by the experts in the last 6 years. And people are coming around to appreciating critical thinking, debates, and all that. We're going back to a merit-based system where demonstrated discernment, grit, and knowledge prevail over credentials given out by the parasites. And navigating our future that's rapidly becoming so complex, the rise of technology, AI, automation presents many ethical and moral challenges that will have to be sorted out as they come. And this is all uncharted waters. The industrial age rewarded physical strength, physical labor. The information age rewarded knowledge. And this new AI age will reward discernment. It'll be extra challenging to have good discernment. Do you ever find yourself looking at videos now and you're not even looking at the content so much as trying to figure out if it's AI or not? Yeah, we were very lucky though because we can remember a time before AI. And since most of the weight community is predominantly Gen X, we also remember a time before things got severely digital. So it's very cool and advantageous to span those different eras. So many conservative minded people were raised in Christian homes. A lot of them left, drift away from the faith. The common assumption is that they left because Christianity restricted the lifestyle they wanted to live. But I don't believe that's the primary reason in many cases. Most people that just want to live a certain way just go ahead and do it, regardless of the religious affiliation. What often drives people away is not the moral teaching themselves, but what they perceive as logical inconsistencies within the framework used to defend those teachings. And this is where I find the concept of Christian ethics, or what some might call Christian ethicism, particularly valuable. Rather than relying solely on appeals to authority, tradition, or scripture, it seeks to demonstrate why Christian principles are beneficial through reason, logic, and observable outcomes. It appeals to people's desire to be logically consistent. It asks not only why does this principle make sense, and how does it contribute to human flourishing, strong families, healthy communities, and a stable society. The challenge with relying exclusively on faith-based arguments is they're persuasive only to those who already accept the underlying premises. If someone does not believe the Bible is divinely inspired, quoting scripture alone is unlikely to convince them. To that person, a biblical verse carries no more authority than a passage from any other religious text. And that is not a criticism of faith, it is simply an acknowledgement of how persuasion works. Effective communication requires meeting people where they are. As people become more deeply rooted in faith, there can sometimes be a tendency to substitute faith for reasoning. While faith has an important place in religious life, it should not come at the expense of logical consistency. In fact, faith and reason should reinforce one another. When beliefs align with moral principles and logical analysis, they become far more compelling and resilient. This is why I believe logical consistency is so important. Morality can often be interpreted differently depending on denomination, culture, or individual understanding of Scripture. Logic, however, provides a common language. People from different backgrounds, beliefs, and worldviews can still engage in logical arguments. When principles are grounded in reason, they have a potential to reach a much wider audience. If the goal is to preserve and promote Christian values in a rapidly changing society, then simply telling people what to believe in is not enough. We need to explain why those values matter. We need to demonstrate how they lead to stronger communities, greater personal responsibility, healthier lives, and more meaningful relationships. Arguments built on logic and evidence can reach people who would otherwise dismiss faith-based appeals. Ultimately, I believe the strongest approach is one that combines faith with reason. Faith may provide the foundation, reason builds the bridge. People see that a belief system is not only morally compelling, but also logically coherent, are far more likely to take it seriously. In an age where skepticism is growing and traditional authority is increasingly questioned, ideas that can withstand both moral and logical examination will be the ones that endure. I believe it's more important to be logically consistent than morally consistent. Morality is subjective to your interpretation of Scripture, and logical consistency leads to multiple people arriving at the same conclusion. Thanks for listening to my rants on morality and ethics. The life unexamined is not worth living. Socrates. Till next time, adapt and overcome. Times like now, it's important to consider where your money is going to be the safest. Now, gold and silver and other precious metals have withstood the test of time. They have outlived governments. If you're interested in wholesale prices on gold and silver bullion, send me a message or click the link below. Until then, see you next time.